lunch. Hopefully no one had the turkey, but it looked like everybody had the turkey. So I know you're all, I don't want you to fall asleep during our talk. So everybody stand up. We got this selfie stick and we really want to use it. So we're going to take
really
a selfie with all of you. Come on, stand up.
Yeah, all right. Woo! Okay, I'm gonna come over here and we can't see anything because of the light. We'll have to block it.
All right. We'll block it.
All right, are you guys ready? 3, 2, 1, woo! There we go.
There we go.
All right.
All right, thanks everybody. So hi, I'm Renee. This is Alan.
Hello.
And this is Feeling Testy, making Angular for all your making Angular testing fun for all of your developers, or is what we've been calling it at Nerd, how Ellen got Renee to run the JavaScript tests.
That's true. That's the thing we call it.
So, hi, I'm Renee Hendrickson. I've been doing web development professionally for about 15 years now. I've worked in all kinds of different frameworks and stacks. Primarily these days, I do a lot of Ruby development. But since I've discovered Angular, JavaScript has become really fun to me. As opposed to like a necessary evil I had to deal with. So thank you for that. I love it. Also, thank you for having us here at NG Vegas. I've never been to Las Vegas before. I hear there's roller coasters and there's a water slide. I'm like, this is great. So thanks so much.
I'm Ellen Wonderlandly. I have also never been to Las Vegas. I'm also excited about roller coasters, but less so about water slides, just personally. I'm a junior full stack developer at Nerd, so this lady is my boss. I'm full stack, but I particularly enjoy front end and end up writing a lot of Angular. We have a number of different Angular projects at Nerd, and I've written at least one line of code into all of them, and for most of them I've written a very large chunk of that part of the stack.
Awesome. So Nerd is Northwest Independent Ruby Development. We have Ruby in our title, but we're really any tool, the right tool for the job shop. We do hosting, we do mobile, we do Ruby, Rails, Angular, whatever. We just like to have fun and solve problems for people. So we've got some really cool Nerd shot glasses that might come in handy at the party later. So we have 10 of them. We're going to have them in the room. If you come and ask us a question about our talk or about anything, or about Seattle, which is where we're from, you can get a shot glass and then use it later.
Yeah.
All right. So testing, a little bit about testing. Hopefully I don't need to convince anyone here that you should test your code. That's not what this talk is about. So, as I said, we come from the Ruby community, and the large, ethos in the Ruby community is really about testing and test-driven development. And that's something that we at Nerd have adopted as one of our best practices, is doing test-driven development for our code. So we're used to the Ruby stack and how you do test-driven development within Ruby. So as we learn and adopt other frameworks and work in different parts of the stack, how we test those pieces and incorporate that into our testing workflow, that's what this talk is about. So how do we get all of our team to do testing at every level of the stack that they're touching?
So despite the fact that testing is pretty awesome, a lot of people don't test consistently, and there are different arguments for why not. But the argument that I hear most often is that tests are hard to maintain, that it's hard to keep them up to date, to have tests that actually reflect your real code base. Especially with end-to-end testing, where like a really small UI change can break all of your tests, right? It's typically touched by a number of different people on the stack. It's not just your JavaScript developers writing your end-to-end tests. It's also affected by what your designers do with the UI, by what your DevOps people do with, or your backend people, I should say, do with the actual data that you're getting back. So I hear that it's hard to maintain. However, at Nerd, we don't agree. We think that tests are hard to maintain not because of some inherent problem with testing, but because developers don't run the tests. And they don't run tests because tests are really poorly integrated into our workflow and our work environment. Testing needs to be second nature for everyone, from your technical designer to your DevOps team, and that's not really a structure that a lot of shops end up putting into place.
There it is. So as Ellen just said, and as I've talked about before, I really don't think that there's anything as a code problem. It's not a problem with our tools, it's not a code issue, it's a people problem. Sometimes a process problem, but that's really just a lot of people problem. So Ellen has a people problem. She brought hers for show and tell.
This is my boss, Renee. She's my problem. Renee has some horns and like green snot coming out of her nose. She looks like this a lot. It's pretty much like that's a normal thing.
Yeah.
And Renee is good at a lot of things, and one of her favorite things to do is to break my tests, and it usually looks something like this.
Hey, Ellen, I had to change the Ruby API in the back end for this app, and I went in and changed a bunch of the Angular code to reflect the API change. Can you go review my pull request?
Yeah, not a problem. Renee, you broke all of the tests.
What are you talking about? The tests were green. I ran them before I pushed up. Everything was fine. I don't know what you're talking about.
What about the JavaScript tests? Did you run those?
Darn it. How do I do that again?
That happens all the time.
It's so hard. All right, so here's our typical nerd workflow. It's probably pretty similar to other development shops' workflows. If you use Git or some kind of source control, this is what we do. This is probably similar to your workflow. We pull down the latest code. We write some awesome tests and code. We run our test suite. So this is the part where it's a little Ruby-ish. We use Rake, which is a great Ruby DSL for task management, very commonly used to string together test suites. So we run Rake. It runs all of our tests for us. As soon as those are cleaned up and green and ready to go, we add, commit, and push up to an awesome feature branch.
So that's our testing workflow, and the normal nerd testing workflow is not showing up there because it's in the wrong color, but it's just to run Rake.
Yep.
And since our end-to-end testing and our other tests with Protractor and Jasmine weren't getting run very often, we decided to sit down after writing these tests with some developers who don't write Angular and look at this workflow and see what happened. So, we started out with just the Rake spec to run the Rails tests, and then we went ahead and did Rake Jasmine because we use a gem to run Jasmine. And
what is this? What are these errors? What's going on?
We ran into some problems, and then we fixed them. And then we realized that we needed to install Jasmine. We hadn't done that. We didn't have an error for that. So we installed it. We ran Rake Jasmine. We went to localhost 8888, which is how that gem works. And then we did Rake Protractor Tests to try to run our Protractor tests. And
what is this? What are these errors? What's going on? It's all broken.
We ran into some problems. And then after that, we realized we had to change the way we were installing Protractor. So we reinstalled Protractor, we installed the JDK, and
what is this? What's wrong?
We ran into some problems. So what were the problems we were running into?
So the first one there with Jasmine, we got something that looked like this, and I said, Ellen, there's no Jasmine tests. What are you talking about? There's no tests. You didn't write any tests. What am I running?
And I said, Renee, I wrote some tests. Your configuration is wrong.
So if you don't have Jasmine installed and you run it and you go to the site, it just says no tests found. So config issue.
Yeah, but the problem with using tests and with using a suite that your development team isn't familiar with is that you end up getting a lot of false flags for success and for failure because you aren't used to the same setup. And so since we saw Jasmine, I mean, you can see up here, it shows that Jasmine is there, it shows us the version, and it says no specs are found. So that looks like a flag for success from her end, but for people who are more familiar with how this particular version of Jasmine runs, you can see that that is also likely an error. So if you have these false flags up and you're relying on your development team who doesn't understand these flags to then go and debug them and move on, you have some issues. It's much harder to implement your testing.
So our second problem was if Protractor isn't properly configured or you're missing some random dependency, you basically get the same error, which is cannot run tests with options blank string. So I see this and I say, Ellen, your tests are broken.
And I say, Renee, your configs are broken. So from my perspective, I feel like cannot run tests with options empty string is kind of the undefined is not a function of Protractor. It comes up a lot for various issues that are not necessarily related to your configuration. And again, I know that because I wrote these tests and I'm familiar with them. But when your team isn't familiar with this testing suite, then this user error, which in this case was a configuration error again, that looks like bad development. It looks like something that was pushed up is broken, and they don't know how to debug that. They have not seen that difference.
So the last one there we've got is you go to install everything, and you get this little pop-up that you just click away, and then you look in your terminal window and looking at the log there, and you see everything looks like it's installed, everything went green, life is good.
No.
No, it's not good, apparently. No. Maybe I shouldn't have closed that pop-up window?
Yeah, so it turns out, in the way that we installed the JDK here, it opens up a pop-up window, and the default option, the thing that's selected when you hit enter on this pop-up window, is to close the window, not install the JDK, proceed with your installation, and not give you any errors or notification that it's wrong. Now, we have documentation about this in our commit, that we have that in the commit message. It's in the pull request. It's in the wiki. It's in the README saying, hey, when this comes up, don't close it. I sat down next to 3 separate developers and said, you're going to get a pop-up window. Don't close it. Hit yes. Every single one hit enter. This is not because they're illiterate. This is not because they're not good at this thing. It's because everyone has habits, right? We understand and we expect certain things from our code. We're used to a certain workflow. And if you don't work with these habits that exist, if you work against them, if you have things that are counterintuitive to the way that your developers work, then you're going to have problems. You'll lose these users, and they won't want to run your tests, or they won't be able to do it successfully. So there are a lot of different solutions that do exist for this problem, right? So that includes Grunt. You can run Grunt to have Grunt run your test suite. That works really well if you write JavaScript, right? If you're already someone who knows how to debug Grunt, who knows how to run Grunt, and who does this as part of their normal development workflow, that's a good idea. If you're someone who just writes CSS, running Grunt is maybe not the right choice for you. Similarly, there's also continuous integration that you can use to run these tests. But the problem with most continuous integration is that it doesn't run until after you've already pushed up your code. So you're already putting up broken code for your coworkers to pull down and have these broken tests that exist already. So that's not great either. There are a lot of JavaScript ways to solve this problem, but again, it's a people problem. Throwing JavaScript at this problem about having a hard time understanding JavaScript doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? So you need to work with your team and not against it. Don't keep throwing JavaScript at this problem. Instead, identify your team's tendencies and workflows and incorporate your testing into what's already there.
Okay, so going back to our nerd workflow, what do our typical developers do? So there's a Git process to this. We're pulling down code, merging in latest, writing code on feature branches, running tests with Rake. We're adding and committing and then pushing and doing a pull request once it's back out there. But this is our local workflow with Git and a little bit of Rake, the Ruby side. So we need to incorporate our Jasmine and Protractor integration tests into our standard workflow and test suite. There's basically a couple of places here that we've identified that we can incorporate getting the dependencies set up, so doing the installation, making sure everybody's ready to run the tests, and then actually running the tests when we expect them to be. So being primarily Ruby developers, we first identified Rake as part of where we could integrate this new process. It changed up there and not over here. That's great.
Fine.
Okay, no worries. So getting our installation and dependencies set up. So we first identified Rake, and I mentioned before, Rake is a great Ruby DSL for writing tasks. So we wrote some Ruby tasks to check the operating system. So we have Linux and Mac support. We don't have anybody that's developing on Windows. Sorry. So we check which operating system they're running, and then we check for the dependencies. So the dependencies we're looking for are that they've got the JDK installed, they've got Node installed, and they've used NPM to install Protractor. So those are the big ones for us. So we're working, we check the operating system, and then we are typically working with the package managers for the system. So if we're working on a Mac, we're looking at Homebrew. There's some Ruby code there, which is great to install the JDK and to get Node installed. On Linux systems, we're using like apt-get or yum. Looking at that, something we also looked into was the Ruby version manager, which has a number of bash scripts that do this. So there's some bash code that we looked at to do this, and kind of determining whether we should use some Ruby code or some bash script, or just, find the package manager and work with it. We basically said we're going to work with package managers. And did note that for the JDK, there's an interesting problem there, and the way the package managers deal with this is they're either getting the latest Java package from a source that they have, that they've already cloned it to, or going out to the website, and you have to accept the terms from Oracle to download the JDK. So it's a little more complicated than just hitting the URL and downloading the package. You have to actually set the cookie that you've accepted this. So that was some of the problems we ran into there, but we eventually got this, so it'll go through, check your dependencies, install your dependencies, make sure that's all set up before it even tries to run the tests.
So as Renee said, we initially used Rake to run these scripts, and adding this to a Rake task or to our RSpec is a really great choice for a Ruby developer, but what about for non-Ruby developers like probably most of you? So we like to incorporate this into our Git hooks, to add Git hooks for these behaviors so that it applies and it runs whether your developer remembers to do it or not. It runs whether your designer remembers to do it or not. It's always going to go ahead and run, and it can run locally on your machine instead of running up on GitHub like in continuous integration. Yeah, so we liked adding, you can add a git pull hook that when you pull the code down, it then runs the script, or when you're running the tests. If running tests is a solid part of your workflow already, you can do that as well, and probably other things, other places. Pick your favorite.
Awesome. So
that was too many slides.
Wow, that was a lot of slides.
It was.
All right. This is the correct slide.
Indeed.
So making sure that we're running all of the test suites at one time. So again, we initially just incorporated this into our Rake. So our developers, we run Rake. It runs our Ruby tests, and then we set up some custom Rake tests to make sure that the correct servers were running for Jasmine and Protractor in the correct environment. So something we realized when Ellen and I sat down and she was showing me how to run her Jasmine tests, and I said, these are running against my development environment. I don't want these running against my development database. I want these running against a test database. So making sure that we got the correct environment for our back-end application set up, and it was hitting that test application as opposed to development. We didn't want to mix those. So that's part of what our Rake tasks do, is make sure the correct environment's set up, the servers are started, the database is clean, it's running the tests, and it's rerunnable, so it's cleaning up all of those things, shutting down the server, cleaning up the database, so you can run Rake over and over. It runs all of the tests, starts all the right things, and you've got all your integration tests in the same place that you've got your Ruby tests. But we discovered one thing is our technical designer, who's awesome. She writes all of our CSS code. She's great with Git, but she doesn't actually run Rake. She's not writing test code. She's looking at the app and making sure things look beautiful. So she puts in her CSS code, pushes it up, and tests are broken. And we're like, wait, oh, you're not running Rake. What are you doing?
What she's doing is she's doing that same Git workflow that we talked about before. Since we are incorporating Git, then it's really easy to attach Git hooks to the Git add, Git commit, Git push. My favorite sort of structure for this, since you can have both a warning hook and a hook that aborts the action that you just took, I like to have a warning hook on the commit. So if you need to commit some code that does break some tests just while you're going through the process, so you have these sort of places that you can go back to, you can still do that, and then to abort the push if you have broken tests there. And of course, you can use no verify then to continue to go ahead and push up even if the tests are broken, but you are adding this structure to your workflow that encourages you to run these tests before you push them up for other developers to run.
All right, so what's our solution here? Our solution here is find out what your testing process is and what your developer's workflow is. Identify how these two work together or where you're butting heads and how that can be resolved. It's a people problem, but we can use technical tools to solve people problems. That's favorite part of my job. So find out where in your workflow you can make sure that the tests are going to get run. Actually want it as easy as possible for your developers and everyone on your team to run your tests and know what's happening with their changes to the application. And the important part, share with others. Tell us about your process, how you solve these problems with your team, put it out there in the world, and everything's rainbows after that. So Ellen, I've made some changes to the Ruby API on the back end, and of course I touched some Angular code. I had to make that work with my changes. Could you review my pull request?
Yeah, that's not a problem. Renee, you broke all my tests again.
I know, I saw the errors. Could you fix them for me, please?
Great, thanks.
But yeah, that's a subject for another talk. She still has people problems.
Yep, I do.
All right, so I'm Renee, she's Ellen.
Sorry. Oh, God.
Thanks so much. We've got a link up for speaker rate. We'd love your feedback. Come chat with us and get yourself a cool shot glass in the back. And all of our code for doing this with an example Angular Rails application is up at the Nerds organization on GitHub. You should be able to find that.
Also, I accidentally deleted our selfie, so I'd love to take another, because I'm good at a lot of things. But apparently, taking selfies of large groups of people is not one of them. Great, thank you so much.
All right, thanks, everybody.